I mostly worked on narrative design teams in DigiPen, as well as done a good amount of voice acting, so that's a kind of sector of game design that I'm interested in.
My name is Greg Walls. Been at DigiPen for a couple of years, going into my junior year now. I'm in the RTIS program, the Real-Time Interaction Simulation, which is a very fancy way of saying game programming. And I also do game design, and I produced my last team for Game Web Games.
Do we have any questions from the audience?
I have a question.
Well,
Or to get into the gaming world.
started at the age of 3 for me. That was my parents' parenting strategy. They kind of just sat me in front of a TV and was like, play Zelda. And I was like, okay. For me, actually, game design came a little bit later because I worked at Sucker Punch for 5.5 years as a tech artist. It's mostly a service-related industry, and it wasn't until I got my hands on Project Spark and something that was more an engine that you could create in that I found that I had something to express to other people and something to say. And so that was kind of a launching point for me, coming to grips with the fact that being a game designer is about many different things. It's not just about servicing other people, it's about expressing yourself. So that was kind of my experience with it.
Yeah, mine also started at a very young age. When I was really little, I told these guys a story the other day. Me and my family, we didn't really do gaming systems until we got home one day and found a Nintendo 64 on our porch. No idea who left it there. And to this day, I have no idea who left it there. But that kind of started this really long, winding path. And then in high school, I got really into computers. And I actually started in Japan in the RTIS program for programming. But while I was there, I found that while I could do programming, I was passing my classes and everything, my real passion was in creating that experience, like getting past that wall of code and then seeing what I can do with it to really have people get people to have fun with what I was working with. So I switched degrees and I've been doing that ever since.
Well, I started gaming when I was really little, so little I can't even remember. The thing that actually convinced me that I wanted to work in video games is basically I was working in retail after graduating. And I got tired of it, quit my job, started watching some streamers of games online, and they were playing Super Metroid. And they were just having a blast with it. It's a 20-year-old game at this point. And I kind of went, that's what I want to do. I want to make a game that 20 years from now, people are still having fun, still having the time of their life playing. And that's what my goal in life is now.
Oh gosh, I played a good amount of games growing up, but I was actually, a year before I started at DigiPen, I was in law school and very miserable. And a friend of mine, suggested I go to the Game Developers Conference in San Francisco, and so I went. I had an amazing week going to fantastic talks about just all these interesting things people are doing. I learned about how powerful games can be. And I withdrew from law school the day I got back and applied to DigiPen. So I was just really impressed by the way that designers that I talked to and whose talks I went to were using games to inspire and actually create social change. So that's really how I got into game design. And I actually have a degree in English already, and so looking into narrative design, which is really focused on storytelling and character development, just was a really natural fit for me and something I'm very passionate about.
I've been a gamer for as long as I can remember in my life. Started from a very, very young age, like on the Atari that we borrowed from our cousins, the original Nintendo system that we borrowed from our neighbors that played, until one day our parents bought us, me and my brother, a Super Nintendo. And I'll never forget that day because I was actually playing pinball on the Atari that day. And my brother walks in the door with a huge smile on his face and a brand new Super Nintendo. The games that came with it were Legend of Zelda, Link to the Past, and Super Mario World. We played them into the ground. And that started a lifelong love affair with video games. After high school, I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life as a career or as a job, so I joined the military. I did that for 6 years. About 3 years into it, I realized I did not want to do that anymore. So I a long, hard look at what I really wanted to do for the rest of my life that would make me happy, something that I'd actually wake up every morning and say, yes, this is what I want to do with my life. I'm happy doing this. And the answer was video games. I couldn't think of anything else that would make me more happy than making video games for the rest of my life. And as soon as the day I left the military, I applied to DigiPen, and I haven't looked back since.
Yeah, I think that yes, to half of that is, it's definitely going more in one direction, but I think that they both are kind of growing with each other.
My game, it's up to Giga Gravity Games is just an arena brawler. You're 4 robots inside of an entertainment arena and you blow each other up. And even though that's not an emotional journey, it doesn't have a lot of narrative to it, it's a 4-player game. You're sitting down with friends or family, and it's really fun. And when you get a game that's just fundamentally fun to play, that brings you joy, it brings you happiness, it takes you out of your reality for a second.
And the same thing with the Oculus Rift, I feel, just for these first few years, people are going to be making prototypes, they're going to be making things just to understand how the technology works. And once that comes online, people will have a better desire, I guess a greater desire to build games and more.
We're at this point now where, for the first time, I think, since the 80s really, we're seeing a huge change in interaction with games. Like, we're going away from, maybe not going away, but we're certainly adding to our repertoire touch. That's present history, and now we're moving into things like Oculus, and I'm sure that eventually you're going to tie in some very human motions and interactions to those games. So how is that changing the way you guys think about games, if at all, and where do you see it going in the next couple decades?
I was actually about to address the earlier question. I think I can answer that one as well as that one in the same go. I personally also consider myself a narrative designer. Maybe not as proactive as Alexandra is, but narrative design is kind of where I see the future of the industry going, by and large, is where there's still a lot of room for development. And narrative design comes down to more than actually just simply telling the story. Narrative design is the world that you build around you. It is all the little objects. You can tell a story without even saying anything. So once you get into the realm of the Oculus Rift and stuff like that, and all the VR, the HoloLens, all those things, you can start to build a fully immersive world. I think it's interesting, and kind of just have to see where the future goes, but it does present a lot of interesting opportunities for us as designers to get involved in.
I brought 3 with me, so you guys can try it out. No, I can't speak too much of it because it's all still very much behind closed doors. But there is this very interesting. I wouldn't call it a battle right now, but people are trying to decide whether VR or AR is the next big thing, and I don't think anyone really knows. But for me, I think that gamers are.
It's an adventure game, but there are definitely RPG elements. So we're even seeing it in our student projects too, which is very cool. And regarding the future, one application that I'm really excited about is allowing folks who are differently able to experience things that they normally never would or believe that they never would. So I think AR developments are going to enable that, and that's just so exciting to me.
One of the most exciting things about gaming to me is that it evolves with technology, and technology is evolving very rapidly. It's getting much, much, much better. And as it does, games will go along with it because we're computer engineers. We program on the technology that's available. So whatever comes next, we're going to make a game for it. Whatever you can imagine next with the technology you see, we're going to make a game for it because that's what people want and that's what we want to do. Phones came out, and as soon as we realized they were a computer, we made games for them, and people played them. And as soon as we realized, oh hey, there's this cool 3D thing we can do. The Oculus Rift, we were like, all right, games, here you go. Our imagination will never be limited, ever, because we will always have technology to allow us to do literally anything we can think of, and that's really cool. So AR or VR or phones or outer space or whatever, we're going to be
media element, and what I see, kind of what you guys were talking about is, you know, sometimes there is an emotional hook in film and there's an emotional hook in games as well. Do you guys see the two mediums melding? Where what would you see? What would you make to kind of fit into that need?
Yeah, I would absolutely love to go and see a movie that you just described, where you get to like put on the VR headset and like step into Brad Pitt's character's role and just kind of either ride along and see what happens, or you get to make decisions as you move through that world, and all of the extras have like little taglines that you can go up and interact with them, and that would be awesome. Yeah, it's definitely moving that way. I know in games
Down and having a story told to you that maybe it's, I believe in the capacity for games to make experiences that resonate emotionally with you more than a film would generally be able to. But I do think that if we ever get to a point where there's a loss of a purely passive film, that'll be a huge disappointment in my mind.
It reminded me of which plays Pokemon. So I think we're already seeing it now. Countless thousands of people all over the world all playing the game together, and countless other thousands who didn't usually want to watch to see what happens. I think we're seeing that happen more often with YouTube and Twitch in these, well, kind of celebrities almost appearing in these mediums. People love games. They love playing games and they love to watch games.
But some really good ones to look at that even as I was playing with them, I felt like they were interactive movies. Heavy Rain, Wolf Among Us, The Walking Dead.
anything Telltale's making.
Yeah, pretty much Telltale and Quantic Dream are really good studios to look at for that. And you get to play a certain protagonist or a couple of different ones and decide their personalities and their actions, but there is a narrative, a story behind it that's going to go a certain way. So there's still, the developers had agency there, but they give you a little bit of room to decide your own. So some good stuff to take a look at.
Talk a little bit about kind of an idea that I have that I think would be really cool. And I don't think it's too far away, potentially, but it kind of melds two different things that I really like. I grew up reading a lot of choose your own adventure books, which I think are super rad and people enjoy choice, and a lot of it came from that.
Are you familiar with Her, the gaming company Her, that does all the Nancy Drew games?
I'm familiar with them, yeah.
Sorry.
So I like that aspect of kind of early reading as a child. And then kind of more recently I've stumbled across this thing called Puzzle Break, which is where you go into a room with about 12 other people and you solve a puzzle together and you have an hour to do so. And so I think it would be really neat to take something where maybe everyone has a headset on, or maybe it's AR, or whatever it might be, and you are playing with people around the world trying to problem solve together in an interactive environment that is unfolding in front of you. And whether that's puzzle-based or whether that's a film and you're choosing how that unfolds, I think that would be a really neat experience for the individual and a good team-building exercise for people that are playing together.
Single player, two-player, four-player. And that's it. What's next? When's the next leap forward?
Number of players, or just design in general, or
So the design challenge with 4 players always concerned couches. So you're selling it to somebody that's going to sit on the couch, and the couch happens in a couple of different places. What happens when you have more than a couple of couches? What happens? Say you want to design a game for the IMAX, and you have to have 200 people in the theater. When does that leap happen?
gotcha. And I
Because
think
it's a gulf. It's a question that places right now are going out of business. Movie theaters in the night. Whereas in China, they're opening new theaters every week.
I don't necessarily have an answer for that. What I will say is that
Because technology has been moving so quickly, we now have second screen capabilities at all times. There's no cost to create these types of experiences now.
Scott Macklin. He's a professor of communications at the University of Washington. Don Thacker, owner of Kinogos Films. This guy right here. This is Rick Walters. I want y'all to take a look. All right. He is one half of the transmedia web series Phoenix Run, which opened our opening night here at Stiff. And if you haven't seen it, you should talk to this guy. He's Well, I actually haven't seen him. I talk to him almost daily, so good luck.
That's Skip for you.
This is Jeff Barber, and he is the owner of Laughing Tortoise Media, one of the older transmedia companies here in Seattle, and also is a. Did we already do your forum on web series?
Yesterday, yeah.
Yesterday.
Yep.
This is how well I'm in the loop. So we're going to talk about transmedia, what it was, what it is right now, and the future of transmedia. Gentlemen, discuss.
Dudes, that's why we're here. This is ridiculous. Oh man, you gave me a microphone. Okay, so transmedia is not new. Transmedia is not novel either. What?
Double fisting.
No, I was just, now that side has one and we have one, and it's cool. Whoa. Transmedia is not new or novel, it's what humans do. We've given it a name, which is really weird, and then we like tried to co-opt it into some cool like new age thing, but it's really just like, hey, you see that movie? Yeah, I saw that movie. Want to draw a comic about it? Yeah, let's do it. Or like, let's tell a story. Oh, wait, we have this ability to make feature films now. That's really cool. What's the first film we'll make? I don't know, a book? Like, it's transmedia is storytelling. Human beings are storytellers. It's just what we do by default. The first cave painting ever was some guy making up some shit he did about hunting. It's super simple. That was our first connection to storytelling, or at least our first connection to art. I mean, we brought with it to a cool thing. I'm getting that.
So this right here, there is a red portion of the meter over there.
That's actually,
it's a tangent. Yeah, it started it then.
that was actually my point.
Sun here with this new buzz of transmedia. We've got some developers here. I'd like to hear about your work. What are you doing that's actually pushing that parameter? But I love where he was going with tangent, because in many ways, tangent doesn't necessarily coincide. I have a story, do I put something out on another format? Is it a tangent? I want you to go deeper or further, and what do you mean by tangent?
Well, we'll hear everything he said in a nutshell. Basically, transmedia to me is a narrative unfolded over multiple platforms. It doesn't have to be multiple platforms like your computer, a book, or whatever, but it's the same story narrative. And using George Lucas's model as an example, George Lucas created the expanded universe, the extended universe for something. Everybody know what the EU is with regard to Star Wars? Okay. Well, the first fan fiction started back in the 70s. It's a world, and that world lent itself to telling other stories. And there will be fan films from every single goes through. It tells the story of our protagonist that happens in the web series. But then in the video game, we have a vine that comes off that allows you to have agency, like Don wants to talk about, within this world of Phoenix Smart stories. Comic books and drive traffic. The narrative happens. It'll never change what started a long time ago, but what...
There's going to be a time to open up questions.
Now's the time.
Now, it's a discussion, man. Please.
So, what you're talking about having a vine, I love that, but I know that before I heard the word transmedia, which was 4 or 5 days ago, I would think of, especially like the Star Wars universe, as
getting them interested in what we're doing. We have to do it on a much smaller scale than it's been done in the past, because there's no more big studio money. The cavalry is not going to come and bail you out of your artistic conundrum. So I think transmedia is just dollars on a 5-day shoot in post-production. You can do the same thing on that same scale with a comic book, or a video game, or a novel. Or
The key point about transmedia, which is participatory storytelling. So a true transmedia platform will give the audience opportunities to either participate in the story, add to the story. As Rick mentioned, Star Wars, you can find fan films out there, but I think the real opportunity for us as independent filmmakers and media makers is we have an opportunity to invite people in, make them a part of the story. When they get invested in it, they tell other people about it, and that's how you grow your audience. And you can do that organically with a fraction of the budgets that are required for Hollywood-type movies that cost $200 million to make and another.
Okay, what are the revenue streams that we can create out of multiple paths to tell a story? I think that you're right, it's participatory media, but people have already participated. With Star Wars, people were participating in creating their own worlds, regardless of the word cinematography at its root based. Cinematography, writing with the camera.
Give away some of the narrative in order to have participatory media.
Through line and marketing. That's it. I know some dudes who can draw. I'll make them draw a thing. But what I've done is I had a story about a guy who wants to blow up the moon, and that by default, and some of it can only exist if I have total control of the narrative, and some of it can only as a video game. That's totally legit.
I'm Doug Stapleton, and I'm the writer-director of Deadline. I'm here at STIFF 2015.
So you're like batting 100 per
there we go, yeah.
1,000 or something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I remember your previous film was like this film is definitely the previous film was kind of very like contained, like just kind of one room.
Right.
This is a lot more complex.
Yes.
So you kind of like grown as a filmmaker.
Actually, I wrote both the scripts at the kind of the same time. I ended up doing the previous film, Take 38, because it seemed like it was easier to do with one room and one scene, basically.
Yeah. Did you do like with Wonder? How did you find her? Did you have like an open casting call?
I did. I actually held auditions and brought people in and did the full audition and casting process.
Cool. Hey, do you guys have any questions for Doug?
Actually 3 nights, and then I did some exteriors another day, and then some of the video camera, the computer screen stuff on that same day. So 4 days total.
And what are your plans now with it? I mean, how did you get out there a little bit?
Yeah, I haven't really done much with it. Just my wife and I had a baby, so my life's kind of changed a bit. So it hasn't been my total focus at the moment. So I don't know yet. So yeah.
Anybody else have a question?
I live in the east side right now. Yeah.
Yeah, so you could like pop over.
Oh yeah, yeah. I work downtown. So.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
And how do people find out about your film?
In general.
So tell me about your film.
Sure. So Rollout Cowboy, we had our U.S. premiere in 2011, and we are sort of a portrait music documentary about a rapping cowboy from North Dakota who set across on a cross-country tour right in the backdrop of...
So tell me about your film again. I'm sorry, we were removed from the theater.
No problem, Carol. So Rollout Cowboy is a feature music documentary we screened in 2011 across the country and over 50 film festivals. We actually won Best Documentary here at STIFF in 2011. That's how I met these guys. So Rollout Cowboy is basically a portrait story about a rapping cowboy who goes out on a musical tour right as the country is shifting to the Obama era. So it's kind of pits red state against blue state as he goes across to small communities and sort of sends out his message, which is sort of disrupting people because he talks about Obama and sex and culture and things that make people cringe. So that's the story of Rollout Cowboy.
And how do
you can
people
find us on
into it?
Instagram and Twitter and Facebook. We're still marketing, and where they can get the film now, we're available on Amazon, Google Play, YouTube Movies, Vudu, and one more. But Google Play, I mentioned that one. So yeah, we are available if you want to find us online, and visit our website at Rollout Cowboy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So you have a card.
And here's our logo, Rollout Cowboy.
Nice.
There you go. So take one of those for the road. Yeah. And we'll look forward to seeing you in the theaters.
Thank you. And thanks for being on my TV show, Public Interest Issues.
Yeah, no problem. We'll have to connect. Thanks, Janet. That's a wrap.
Shirts at Nursville Pilchuck High School. Coming up, but they had tonight. I'm tracking the wettest neighborhood.
I'm Ryan.
And we're on Jana's Behind the Scenes Public Interest Issues show. We help get her ready for in front of the camera as stress relief team. Ryan is a masseuse.
Yes. So I'm here to I'm here to relax Janet, make her feel better, but I can also do that for you and anyone else that comes in.
Myself as well.
Yes.
With Nails and Feet. We love her. She's a great person. We hope you tune in and continue watching.
Watch it.
Public Interest Issues
We're looking
with
forward
Janet.
to it.
Thank you.
Welcome to Public Interest Issues, a Scan TV show with host Janet Christensen Obrien. Today for our first show we have Chris Campagna. He is doing the Pike Place Pig. Now Chris, why don't you tell us a little about yourself?
Again, my name is Chris Campagna. I'm from Chicago. I'm an artist. I never went to school to be an artist, but it's my job now. I went to school to be a writer. See how good that's doing for me. But I live in Chicago. I do a lot of charity events, including the Pike Place Market. I did the Pigs on Parade 2001, I believe, and I did 4 Pigs on Parade. The Babe, the Band of God sale at the market. I did 2 more pigs.
Welcome to Public Interest Issues, where every episode starts at Cameras West Northgate, where Janet comes to pick up her tapes.
Yeah!
Today we've got Mem Shannon and the membership playing live at the Highway 99 Club.
Yeah!
Enjoy!
Thank you!
Okay.
Well, I've been a big fan of Mem for a long time, and got an email from his manager who made a very convincing case that they needed money to record a live disc. And I thought, why not? So I helped finance it.
And are you from Seattle or where are you from?
I'm from Chicago originally, but lived in Seattle for 15 years. Big fan of the place. Should I look at you or should I look at the camera?
You can see yourself right here. Yeah. And so that's what it looks like. So look at the camera, and then can you tell me your name, or do you want to?
My name is Mark.
Mark.
My name is Mark.
And thank you very much, Mark, for being on my show. My show is Public Interest Issues, and I'm doing the story for you.
He's a great guy, great blues musician.
And what else can you tell me about him?
Well, I think, when you think about Mem, he does a great job of bridging the gap between blues and funk and a little bit of this, a little bit of that. It's very genuine, and what he lacks, what his band lacks in authenticity, he makes up for tenfold. Thank you, Nody.
Thank you. Yeah. And this is Bobby Rush. And you guys are going to be performing, and it's just kind of nice to be backstage and behind the scenes.
Well, this is behind the scenes. That's what you do before you do what you do. I'm getting ready to go to work in a few minutes. I'm saying I have time to relax and get ready to do what I do.
I know it. You do a great job. You both do a great job. Yeah. TV schedule, and they have 3 shows of mine on June 2nd. They have Public Interest Issue at 2 a.m. They have Public Interest Issue at 2:30 p.m. And they have Public Interest Issue at 11:30 p.m. So if you look at the schedule for June 2nd, nominated for an award in 2010 for favorite locally produced program. I won the award for favorite entertainment or visual art. Here's my award. 2009, I was also nominated for favorite one-time only producer from Scan. The media. Scan TV. Other nomination. Murray's campaign press. Did a show on that. With Indie Media. Indie Media. I've been impressed with that since 1999. Indie Media. I write articles. Published author. Read when you've copyrighted a book. That was in 1983. Also been featured in the Quebec Almanac. 1984, Quebec Almanac. And they're quoting me in French. That's the Quebec Almanac article. There I am.
City of Bellingham. And stay wide and get both of us in here. We're here in Seattle today doing Brian's oral history, but it's important to realize that he has a large contribution in the city of Bellingham. We have a district called Fairhaven, and in the Fairhaven area he's responsible for the Fairhaven Green, a large part of it. Always has kids on it. Up the rays all day long, and the Dirty Dan's arms like that. Oh yeah, it was priceless. That's cute. But then we also have.
You give me the name of your class.
So this is a 7th grade class from Seattle Girls School.
That's so nice.
Just part of the class, yeah. And we have 4 other groups out and about today doing the urban scavenger hunt. Tomorrow's the last day of school, so this is a big end of the year project that we do.
Nice. And I'll let you guys, I'll tell you the link. It'll be on YouTube, it'll be on Seattle Community Media, and it'll be on archive.org. So it'll be on 3 different websites.
All right.
And let me have that little flyer.
This is a Seattle Girls School bumper sticker.
And that's a gift for you.
Oh, that's so sweet. And that's my gift to you.
So it's a trade.
Yay. Thanks a lot. Thanks for coming in. Thanks for interviewing me.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
You know, it's amazing what Dan Smirkin has done since the death of your husband. This is your property, your personal property, and Dan Smirkin was trying to interfere. And then on Vanguard and all that other stuff, Dan Smirkin has put in a change of address, and nobody ever told you about it. So what are the kinds of things you're finding out about what Dan Smirkin has been up to?
Well, I've learned that Dan Smirkin is going to great length to fraudulently misdirect my mail to his address that he has for his consulting company down in Olympia, Washington, and that also there has been a great deal of rifling with bank accounts, various bank accounts, all after my husband's death.
Hey, I wore a tie the other day. So what are you trying to tell me? It's hard for me. Yeah,
some space, yes.
Wait till they start screening you with the best clients.
They say, get used to it. I'm going to get real cool.
Have them before the question of the day. Okay. Who are those guys? Take a shot. Okay. Okay, I'll go there. Thank you. So, just a note before we start. We planned and committed to this press conference before knowing the scope of the tragedy in Haiti. So, we'd urge Seattle residents to be generous in their response to that tragedy. We certainly don't want this press conference to distract from that. We'll be sending out a message to city employees pointing out our front. As you may recall, during the campaign,
the Sunday night edition of TS Radio. The only topic we discuss on these shows is the issue of guardianship abuse across the nation. It's epidemic. It is human trafficking. It is the most disgraceful situation. We are being co-hosted again by Beverly Newman. And Beverly, I want to thank you for coming as an elder advocate. Janet Christensen Obrien from Seattle Detective Agency, who has worked on some major cases, took one all the way to the Supreme Court. And when we bring her on, we're going to talk for about 45 minutes so all of you get an idea of what all she has been involved in, what she does daily, how she has approached this, how she tries to expose it. And after about 45 minutes, if you would like to call in with a question or comment relevant to our guest on this show, we kind of worked together and collaborated on a few things here last year. And this is Janet O'Brien, and she runs Seattle Detective Agency, and she became involved in a case for a lady by the name of Dorothy Griega, and I'll let her explain that to you. This is the case that she did get all the way to the Supremes, who of course couldn't be bothered with anything like that. Called Public Interest, and it's she up in Seattle that she does on cable television. Lots of footwork, lots of hard work, lots of research. And Janet, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show this evening.
Thanks, Marty. I totally appreciate you tremendously. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to be on your show. And thank you for the PPJ Gazette blog that you did on the Dorothy Griega issue, too. You're just such an advocate for helping people out there get justice, and I totally appreciate that. I'm working on 3 different guardianship cases right now. Dorothy Griega, Arthur Hayes, and Robert Hamlet cases. And all of these cases, the wards have been defrauded, and the attorneys have misrepresented their capacities to the courts, and the attorneys have defrauded them. I'll go into each case individually, if that's okay with you, Marty.
Sure, please do.
Okay. In the Dorothy Griega case, what happened there is she called me in March of 2007, and she kept calling me. She called me about 30 times, and she kept telling me that her attorney was ripping her off. And I finally went over to her house and listened to her story, and I realized that her attorney was really ripping her off. And we got an accountant on board whose name was Ron Hansen. Ron Hansen is an Edmonds, Washington accountant, and he looked at the stuff that I was doing, and he said that the EIN number that Richard Gregoric, who was an attorney, set up for Dorothy Griega, for the Griega Charitable Trust, the number on that EIN number was a fictitious number, and that Richard Gregoric had a woman named Victoria Salas, S-E-R-L-E-S, who was a trustee for the Charitable Trust. She went over to the Bank of America and set up a bank account using a fictitious name and a fictitious charitable trust number, and hid Dorothy Griega and Stephen Griega's money in that account, and they hid it from the IRS, and they hid it from Dorothy Griega. And we didn't find it until 2007. And then we found open with a check from BDO, and it was a check that was written on a U.S. bank account, and it was opened, and when the check was deposited, it was in the amount of $2,859 in April of 2004. And then in December of 2004, there was a wire transfer of $203,827.69 from Southwest Securities in Phoenix, Arizona that was wire transferred into Dorothy Grega's account, that charitable trust. So what BDO did and what Kent West did, who was the trustee before Victoria took over, they hid money in all these different accounts in different states so that Dorothy and her husband, Stephen Grega, would not have the money that they thought they had. Situation of Dorothy Grega asking all these different people, the Attorney General and everybody, Department of Social and Health Service, and all these different people for help because her attorney was ripping her off. John Sinsheimer, who is a Seattle attorney, to file a malpractice case against Richard Gregoric for misappropriating her money, and John Sinsheimer was about to do that when the guardianship case was filed. What was happening in Dorothy Grega's life is she had not paid her tax returns in 2002, 2003, 2004, 2005, 2006, and the IRS had put a tax lien on her banks and had put a tax lien on her property. And during this time period, Partners in Care, who was appointed as her guardian, had appointed to help her, had removed her money from Washington Mutual Bank during a tax lien and secretly put it into an account at U.S. Bank. And when they put it into an account at U.S. Bank, Partners in Care put it into an account number at U.S. Bank, account number 15359501150. Dorothy Grega's money was put into that account during a tax lien, and Partners in Care did not put Dorothy Grega's Social Security number on that account. And Partners in Care had 10 accounts at U.S. Bank without any of the wards.
Janet,
a little
bit of time to absorb the various Partners in Care, and how did Partners in Care get into this picture with Dorothy Grega?
What happened is Dorothy Grega hired a woman named Janet Summers, who was a lawyer. And Janet Summers convinced Dorothy Grega to hire Partners in Care to help her with her finances and give them the power of attorney and probably act as their advocate for her. She did not authorize them to start stealing her money. So Dorothy first had Richard Gregoric, who was an attorney, who stole money from her, and BDO stole money from her. So she hired Janet Summers to try to get the money back that BDO and Richard Gregoric had stolen from her. And then Partners in Care stole money from her. And they removed money during a tax levy, and that was working with Dorothy Grega during that time period. Her name is Patricia Stauffer, and she's an IRS agent in Anchorage, Alaska, and she liked Dorothy, and she tried to help Dorothy get her finances in order, and she tried to help Dorothy because she heard Dorothy say that all these attorneys were ripping her off, and she tried to work with Dorothy to get her money back as well as me. So Dorothy was a whistleblower, and Patricia did her taxes for her, and then Dorothy sent her the money, and then Patricia asked Dorothy Grega point blank, did you put the money in U.S. Bank to defeat the levy? And Dorothy said, no, I did not. I did not authorize Partners in Care to remove my money from Washington Mutual when there was a tax levy on that account and to put it into another separate account under Partners in Care that didn't have any information with me on it. And so Patricia, Stauffer, with the IRS, knew that Partners in Care was involved in tax fraud and walked it into the Mercer Island U.S. Bank with a woman named Gloria, who was a personal friend of hers and her driver. She walked it into U.S. Bank to ask them to return her money that Partners in Care had removed. And U.S. Bank also never returned Dorothy Grega's money to her. Several attorneys. She hired one attorney to file a lawsuit against Richard Gregoric to get the money back that he had stolen from her. She hired another attorney. These attorneys misrepresented their capacity to the court because Gregory Miller, who represented Dorothy Grega in the appeal and in the Washington State Supreme Court, He never talked to Dorothy Grega in his life, and that's a violation of ethics. An attorney has to discuss strategy and mail things to their client. Gregory Miller mailed stuff to Dorothy Grega's daughter's lawyer, Sally Lanham. Sally Lanham assaulted me in court. She accessed my bank deposit slips without a court order, and she engaged in false swearing and fraud, and she was not Dorothy Grega's lawyer. And Dorothy Grega had never met Gregory Miller in her life, and Gregory Miller sent his bills for representing Dorothy Grega to Sally Lanham, and never sent them to Dorothy Grega. And I argue that he misrepresented his capacity to the court, and that it was a due process violation. The Supreme Court, what happened is on January 2012, I sent it off. Mr. Gregory Miller waived responding.
This is the United States Supreme Court.
No, the United States Supreme Court in Washington, D.C. Yeah, the United States Supreme Court in Washington, D.C. Accepted my writ of certiorari for conference. That means 4 Supreme Court judges look at it. It went to conference on September 24th, and then it got declined on October 1st. So that
you were notified of this by mail from the U.S. Supreme Court?
Yeah, it just gets declined. That means that they have so many cases before them that they're not going to hear this one and allow you to argue it in the U.S. Supreme Court. But at least somebody did look at it. So I'm very grateful that somebody in the U.S. Supreme Court, one of the justices, looked at it and thought it was a merit to send it off to the conference, because a lot of cases do not get in conference. Gregory Miller, who was the opposing attorney in this case, has had a lot of cases in the U.S. Supreme Court, but he's never had any of them accepted. So my case was the only one he's ever had before the U.S. Supreme Court. So it showed on the records that I had one case before the 2008 term, and he only had one case. So my case is the only case that he has represented that's ever gone up to the U.S. Supreme Court. So it's really a big deal that cases go up that far. And you had a case also that went up to that stage.
Yes, and ours was filed on October.
In my case. But in my case, I handled it pro se, and I filed the writ of cert myself. And your father's case is very similar to the Robert Hamlin case, in which a guardianship was entered, and the court entered a protection order against the wife from being allowed to remove her husband from the VA hospital for a period of 5 years, and the guardian who was appointed removed money from their joint bank accounts without a court order, and Robert Hamlin was prevented from leaving the VA hospital, and he was abused and died at the VA hospital. And
this is absolutely, this is beyond criminal.
It's the new crime of the century.